Okay. All right. Can the two of y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna try my best to gallery us. Let's see here. Are either of y'all gonna share a screen or anything?
I just have my camera. I don't think there was anything for me to show.
I didn't prepare for this at all, so.
That's fine. This is gonna be really casual, so
Cool,
that is
cool.
a-okay.
Scuff stream.
I think we're just going on the fly. Justin, you can pull up a chair at the front if you want. I'm gonna try to.
Oh, is Justin there in person?
Yes.
Wow.
I realized I should
How do
come
I-
in person after we went down to stage 2, but I realized that too late.
It's all good.
Oh. Okay.
Do we get to see Justin Cam as well?
Yes, I actually brought a webcam.
Nice.
Let me- Actually, did the two of y'all want to see the room? That might be more beneficial.
That'd be really nice because I have
That
no
could
idea
be
how
cool,
many
yeah.
people I'm talking to.
I don't know if both of my. Oh, do you want to join the Zoom call and point it somewhere, and I can plug in mine and point it somewhere?
Gonna have like a panoramic view. That's pretty cool.
Panoramic view. Here, I'll point mine out.
Do I need 3D glasses for this speaking occasion?
On your VR goggles.
Sorry, coming in the way.
No, you're good. Actually, I don't think your picture works.
Interesting.
The three of you remember this event well. There's usually a lot of
Yeah.
moment of technical setup. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. Oh, that's
Oh my
going to.
gosh, that's Mason.
Nice shirt.
Hey.
Nice.
Let's see. I want to change it to this. Actually, yeah, we'll change it to this so that way y'all can see everybody.
Oh, nice.
There we go.
Oh, nice, nice.
Hello,
Okay.
everyone.
There's everyone. And then I think Karina's setting hers up so that we can get Justin down.
Yes, it's a Noah and Alex cam too.
While we get this set up, do y'all want to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about what you did in EGaDS and what you're doing now?
I guess. Do you want to go first, Ava, or?
Yeah, I can go first.
All right, cool.
I was a president of EGaDS and an information officer as well a while ago, like 8 years ago, maybe. It was a long time ago. I was around when the capstone classes were getting started at UT. Did a game that actually won at the time the E3 student games competition became a nominee and didn't actually end up winning, but we managed to go to E3 because of that. That was a lot of fun. After I graduated, I went into software development, didn't go into the games industry, and I've been doing game development on the side in my free time. So I'm just sort of like an independent game developer who's just using my free time to work on games. So that's sort of my life at the moment.
Well, oh, do you have more, or? Oh my gosh, Justin.
Anyway, he's fine.
Okay, I guess I can go next. So I was main events / events director for 2 years until last year, I guess. So I guess I worked on like the last 2 GDC², stuff like that. That's what I did for EGaDS, graduated last year, and now I'm also doing software development and games on the side. So kind of in the same boat, I guess.
Hi everyone, I'm Justin and I'm a technical artist in the gaming industry. I just work here in Austin and I was an events officer for EGaDS. And I guess in EGaDS I did a lot of game jams, helped plan events. Yep.
Nice.
Well, maybe we're doing this super casually. So if y'all want to maybe start just like what's your favorite EGaDS memory? Maybe what are some fun moments you had in the club? Things of that nature.
That's a good question. I didn't have any fun in this club at all.
That was like years ago.
I can start with a fun memory that I have of EGaDS. So back when I was president of EGaDS, the GDC building was a new building on campus. And the previous years in EGaDS, we really struggled with the fact that EGaDS was overwhelmingly mostly just software development students. We didn't really have that many people who were like doing arts or music or that sort of thing. So there's like this, forget what it's called, but there's like this event on campus for freshmen, like at UT, where you sort of like get the prospective students get to explore all of the colleges and stuff like that. And we had taken it upon ourselves to hold tables at like all of the colleges. So we had a table at like the CS building, then we had a table at the Fine Arts building, then we had a table at the RTF building. We had like tables everywhere, which is very unusual because normally when you're a club on campus, you just have a table at like the one college you're a part of, right? And what was really funny about that day was that we had a lot of like, it was like not 100% prepared, and we had to like shuffle a lot of things around. But in order to shuffle things around, someone had to literally run from one college to the other, and like in order to like carry information and like actual like physical things that people would need to like hand out to prospective students. And that was really funny, but also kind of exhausting. And I think we did that for like a few years, but every single time we did that sort of thing, it was always very hectic and like lots of running because, like it's just a one-day event. So like all the colleges are doing it all at the same time, more or less. So that's something I remember a lot about EGaDS.
Pretty wild. I guess for me, okay, I don't know if this is like my favorite memory, but like for the UT game jam, I think like, was it 2019 or something? Like when we had all the baguettes, that was pretty nice. Like, I don't know, it's just like kind of you guys like trademark scuff type of thing that happens. That's like, I don't know, that's just a good memory in a way.
If you're looking for more scuffed food stories, the pizza was supposed to get here at noon, but it's now getting here at 3, and Alex brought bagels for lunch. So there's our scuffed food story for this year.
That's pretty classic.
I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear EGaDS is still alive and well and just about the same.
Indeed.
Something's wrong with the
Yeah, if something goes perfectly, that's the club's dead.
That kind of reminds me of this one time, I think it was with EGaDS, where we had like a bunch of pizza come in late. And so we just ended up just like the event ended already and then the pizza came. So we just had to just handed out like whole pizza boxes to people. We didn't know what to do with it. Lots of fun pizza stories.
Dude, pizza places just hate us. Like,
How come our favorite memories are just about EGaDS being scuffed?
we just wouldn't have it any other way. Like, yeah.
But yeah, some of my fondest memories was just like after dev nights, a bunch of people would just get together and say like, hey, y'all want to get food and stuff like that? And then just eating with everyone, yeah. And then getting
Taco Bell runs.
Yeah, Taco Bell runs.
Rip.
Closed now.
Yeah.
They closed it.
Yeah, dev nights were a big part of my GDC experience too. It was a lot of fun.
Definitely.
I remember back before GDC, we used to hold them in the econ building, which was kind of interesting.
Which building's the econ building?
It's I don't know how to describe it. I think it's like a little south of the GDC, and it's like this two-story building. Is it behind GDC? I don't remember anymore.
Interesting.
It's somewhere. It's like a pretty small building.
Oh wait, never mind. I think that's the geosciences.
It's like the same thing.
Anyway, we just like had them in the econ building for some reason because they had open rooms, so we would just book it there.
Oh, is that a hand?
Yeah, so one of my favorite like events that we do through EGaDS are like the game jams and stuff. So I was curious, like having experience in like the actual games and like software development industry, how much does that stuff like, how much does that like help you like carry it over into your career?
I personally would say all of it really played like a big role in me getting like my job. It's just and just building my career itself. So I was an AET major, and I guess a lot of stuff we learned was kind of like working in the engine, but just having that game jam experience was able to give me like an advantage in my classes because I already knew how to use the engine and stuff like that. And just having like game projects, I think was also something I was able to talk to employers about. And so, yeah, and I would say that just having better knowledge and use of the engines like Unity or Unreal, like definitely played a huge role. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Yeah. At my first game jam, which was Global Game Jam, or well, I guess that wasn't my first game jam. It was like the first big one that I had went to that had like tons of people participating. I decided I wanted to learn how to use that newfangled engine everyone was talking about called Unity. And so I just went there completely unprepared. I was just like, I'm gonna find someone using Unity and I'm gonna ask them to let me on their team. And that's where I got to use Unity for the first time. And I use Unity throughout college, and my first job out of school actually was for a consulting company that used Unity not to make games, but to make like products that consumers wanted, like architecture visualizations or data visualizations and things like that. So that was a big influence for me from one of the first game jams that I went to.
I guess for me, like having game jam projects and experience like that is definitely helpful for when you do go in for like, like as a CS major going in for those like programming interviews and stuff, you can talk about, your projects and stuff and, just be more game specific about your examples and what you do rather than just like going like, oh yeah, in 3.14 or in like OS, I did this, it's like you have something more specifically related to games that you've worked on. And especially like, you can think about like optimization specifically for games and things, which is, helpful to talk about in your interviews compared to just like a generic programming project.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Having a game project on your resume that you can like actually talk about to a recruiter or at an interview usually is a lot more interesting to someone. Like imagine you're the recruiter and you're just talking to someone about their CS class that they took that one time.
Yeah. I
It's
know,
a lot
like
more
everyone's
interesting
taking
to
this
like,
class. Yeah.
and like I've noticed that like sometimes you'll end up meeting people who like also used to do games and they'll be like incredibly enthused by the fact that they're talking to someone else who also does games. Even if you're like not in the games industry. Like the place where I work right now, there was a short stint where my bosses like made a game one time at some point. So we talk about that sometimes.
Yeah, and it's also nice, especially if you have a game that's like playable in browser, so you can be like, hey, I made this game, and then be like, you can play it right now, and then that could be like something interesting to talk about as well.
Yeah, and they're usually a lot of fun, and so hopefully you're enthusiastic to talk about your game jams, and so that definitely helps carry throughout, like when you're talking to someone about
Yeah.
your game.
And a lot of times though, we take L's during game jams as well, so it's like a good place to draw on for like when they ask you about like, what's one time you overcame like some sort of like difficult situation? You're like, this time when my game was so broken, like you just you have good examples from game jams for like all sorts of questions.
What's your favorite game jam game you've ever made?
Favorite game jam game.
All right, now I have to check my
Favorite
hitchhike
kid.
page.
You gotta pick a favorite game.
Oh no, okay.
If there is one.
It's hard. It's like you have to pick
There's
a
so many
favorite
good ones.
child.
I think the
That's the
one
right answer.
Robert Simulator. Do you remember that?
Okay. I have PTSD from that, Justin. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Robert and I, we did a game jam once, and
It was my first game jam.
and we just called it Robert Simulator. And I remember you basically just like have this very monotone life, and you're just working in the office.
But none of it worked, so you just walked around. There was nothing interactable. It was, yeah, it was sad, but it was a valuable experience, I guess. So, my favorite game,
it's so hard to pick. There's so many good ones with good stories too.
Maybe like a top 3 then.
Yeah.
Top 3. Well, I'll just do one for now. I think the one that has the funniest story is I was working on a global game jam game with some friends, and we were making like this co-op platformer game. Except we wanted to like do this thing where one person would see like a particular layout of the level, and then the other person would see a different layout of the level. And even though both of the things that they were seeing were real, like you could interact with them or hop onto those platforms or stuff like that, you'd frequently have to communicate with your partner that, oh, like there's a platform there that you can stand on, you should go jump on it, and that sort of thing. And like there was sort of this lore of the game that you both thought you were wizards and you had this like contemptuous imp that you had to work with. And what was really funny about that game was that we didn't want to do networking. So we had to figure out a way to like make the game work so that you couldn't see the screen of the other person. And I suggested to my friend like, oh, we could just hook up a dual monitor setup and then make it windowed mode stretch across both windows. And then you just rotate the monitors away from each other and then sit on opposite sides.
oh, wait, I've thought about that exact idea.
And we jam, like when presenting at the end of the game jam. And it was just really funny that like we figured out a way to like do networking without actually doing it. And yeah, the friend I was working with at the time had his mind blown. It was pretty funny.
I would have definitely tried that if I did like an in-person game jam. Sounds so big brain.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah, let's see. I guess the game that was pretty important for me personally was like my game jam, like UT game jam, I think like 2020. Like the Ozone one, which like it was the first game that I was like the only programmer on. And so it was kind of like if I screw up, then like the whole game doesn't work. But like the game worked at the end, so I was like, oh, I can actually like program. That's like kind of surprising. So yeah, that was kind of like, I guess, helpful for my self-esteem personally, going like, because I don't know, before a lot of the games I felt like I was getting like pretty carried by like busted programmers. But like after that, I was like, oh, like I too can write code, and that's a pretty good feeling.
A lot of good game jam games. That's definitely a highlight of being EGaDS.
It's true.
Well, does anyone have a question? I will come up with something. All right. Well, I'm kind of curious. What is maybe something important that you learned through being an officer or through being in the club? Not necessarily about games, but just something in general that you either improved on or learned by being involved in the club.
I
Gosh,
think
there's a lot.
Yeah.
Good.
I think expecting the unexpected is very useful to have during an EGaDS event, especially with the amount of like scuffness that usually happens. You know, so it's like it's good to like expect that things don't go perfectly and have like backup plans to go for that. And just kind of like do better planning and think about like, you know, alternatives, because like, I don't know, plans always screw up somehow, you know, I feel like there's always like something that goes wrong. So it's like, it's helpful to kind of like not just let that like ruin your entire event and kind of like just roll with it.
Definitely. Like the pizza today.
Like the pizza thing, yeah.
I think something that I really learned to appreciate after being president and information officer was like how much work goes into running each event, but then also like how much work it is to convince people to come, even if they want to come. Because a lot of the time I would like talk to people and they'd be like, oh, I don't know if I should go. I'm not like a real game developer or whatever. And I'm like, but you should like, but we want people to come to the event. So that was something that was really difficult to deal with sometimes. But despite the fact that it was like really hard to get people to come and to even organize the event in the first place, I was always pleasantly surprised with like how well everything could go. And I really like respected the ability to like work with a team of people and get all sorts of things to happen that I couldn't normally do by myself. And like the power of working with other people, um, it's pretty awesome. And you can just do things that you can't even imagine usually. So like we just sometimes have speakers that I'd be like, how did you get that speaker to come to EGaDS? Like I don't understand. Like how did you manage to convince this person to come? And that sort of thing was always really cool.
Yeah, just like getting people to come out to events was pretty interesting, and I was in charge of dev nights. So one of my focuses was like, how do I get people like, I guess, interested about making games, but actually make games? Because like that step was like a huge leap, and we did like a lot of planning on trying to making that process like most easily by like pairing people up together, doing like team matchmaking. I'm not sure if that still goes on, but yeah, that's stuff we put a lot of thought into. And sometimes it doesn't go according to plan, or like teams they don't have time like with their busy schedules to collaborate. So I guess just yeah, it's really nice feeling when like the whole dev nights is filled with people like working on their games. So that's just something I really appreciated. Also something I kind of learned how to, I guess, come back.
Yeah, I think one more thing is like, especially for running a club over like multiple years, is the importance of like documentation, and being able to pass things between like generations of officers. Because that was definitely like, as soon as I became an officer, it was like, whoa, there's like all the ancient history, like where is it? You know, there's like no, where's the EGaDS lore? It's gone. So
I have so much EGaDS lore, you wouldn't even know.
yeah, it's just like a lot of like it's really helpful to have like standardized things that everyone can refer to, and like for the future too. I think being main events and events director also is like helpful to kind of look big picture as well and think about like what the club's like, you know, maybe like future like 5 years down the road goals are, and kind of think to how like where you want the club to be and how to like kind of holistically go for that direction. And I think like one thing that's great that I've seen like even during my time in EGaDS is like the fact that we've slowly become not just like only CS majors, which is like really good because like I don't know, programmer only games are kind of like, you know, ugly when there's no art and music and stuff. So it's like, you know, it's good that like over the years we've been able to become a more like diverse and I think like more welcoming club to beginners as well. So yeah,
I'm really
I don't
happy
know.
about that.
Yeah. I don't know what else.
It's surprisingly difficult to pass things down between
It really is.
officer years. Like there's even stuff like, oh yeah, you know, like that EGaDS Steam group that we have, like
There's an
No one
EGaDS
uses it.
Steam group.
Yeah, like there's just stuff like that, like all over the place, right? And it's
Yeah,
like, well, who
definitely.
manages it and stuff like that. Like even after I stopped being officer for a few years, we just like who ran the EGaDS website was like a question that was just sort of ambiguous.
Oh yeah.
Because someone was putting the bill for it and it was still online and
Yeah.
no one knew how to log into it and stuff like that. And
Oh
yeah,
my gosh, that was Twitch this year.
well, that was Twitch this year.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why there's a new EGaDS Twitch channel now because
Yeah.
the authentication is gone.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's like, oh, well, the account, like just passing like an account down from one year of officers to another can be really difficult. And
Yeah.
sometimes things like that just get lost. Like, I think we have a LinkedIn too somewhere.
What do we do?
There's just stuff like that, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, another thing is just how annoying the CS department can be. It's like a
But yeah, we're in the CS building right now. I don't think we should say anything.
they can't hear they can't hear us, right? There's no like secret CS people in here, right?
I told a very fun like drama filled spicy story about EGaDS and the CS school to a bunch of officers like
I
last
remember
year.
that.
Yeah, I don't know if I should get into that. It's probably not a good idea.
It's okay. What can they do to us? We're no longer at UT, right? Like
Yeah, that's true. But I do like EGaDS and I want to be able to show up, you know, so.
true. Yeah.
Now that like all of y'all have some experience in like software or games, like actually working in those industries, what do you think is like either the biggest misconception that you had or people commonly have about like working in those spaces?
I feel like,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
well, the easiest one to point out is just how easy everyone else thinks making a game is. So that is something you have to struggle with a lot. A lot of people don't know how games are made and they just sort of assume all sorts of things that aren't actually true. And that can be kind of hard to deal with, especially when you're trying to get your game out there and that sort of thing. Yeah.
I remember when I was, I guess, a student. One of the questions that I would hear a lot was like, what's the crunch like? And I heard that it was pretty bad like before. Although from my experience working, like I just work 8 hours or the schedule has been pretty flexible. So especially now with like work from home. So I guess that was one that wasn't like as bad for me. But I guess it just depends where you work. But I think most companies have been pretty good about it.
Yeah, I think for me, and this is just kind of personal experience and stuff, but I think before graduating or like getting jobs and internships and stuff, I think I had thought that companies were like more organized and like and they're they had it like all down, because they're like professional and stuff, but like not really. Like it's a lot of people are confused as well as well, so it's like it's even if you don't think, I guess, that you're like professional enough or something, it's like a lot of people also don't know what they're doing, so it's like I guess you don't have to be like as worried as you might think you need to be.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think I lacked confidence when I was a student, and then just going into the workforce, I guess I joined my company as like the only technical artist, which was kind of scary for me because I didn't have any really upper person to look up to. But yeah, you just have to have like confidence in yourself, and you are actually probably smarter than most people you're working with. Yeah, so just have confidence in yourself.
Oh, is that another question?
So with respect to the position you guys are in video games, assuming soon automatically you guys are in the video game industry now, correct?
I am.
Could you repeat that question, Justin? Because I don't think we could hear it on the Zoom.
Oh yeah, he's basically asking us if we're all in the gaming industry currently.
Oh, yeah, I'm not in the gaming industry right now, but I am an independent game developer.
Basically same, yeah. I think Justin's the only one like fully like officially in the game industry one.
Okay, well, go ahead, Liz. I'm just wondering, well, at least, I guess, just helping the broaden it out, perspective to your interest into why you wanted to do video games, like what type, what position, like how you're a part, and I don't know what you guys are, but why did you want to do video games? Like, or at least more concretely, what was the reason for you wanting to, or no, I'm sorry. What was the proof that showed that the video game industry was for you?
Did you guys hear that?
No,
Like
you have
what
to
was
repeat it.
like what was the reason you knew the game industry was for you or something?
Yes. Yeah. So
Oh,
he
okay.
was just asking, yeah, why, like, what proof was it that sorry was that you knew the gaming industry was for you?
I see. Okay.
I guess for me, like one of the main things is I took SWE and I like absolutely like despised that class. And so I was like, okay, I do not want to do freaking like regular programming and work with like only a CS majors because that's just kind of like dreadful personally. And I want to work with like other creative people, like artists and like music people and things like that. So I think for me, it was just like, I can tolerate programming, but I want to work with like other non-programmers and not just, you know, make websites and things like that. Or just, you know, work on, you know, like conventional software engineering stuff.
For
Yeah,
me,
I
there's
kinda-
like two different ways to answer this question. And one is like, well, how do I know the industry was right for me? Because like when you get out of college, a lot of the times the question is, among my peers at least, was like, well, should I get into the games industry or not? And for me, the answer to that question was I didn't, because I felt more comfortable having better benefits, a better salary, and then using my free time, even though it is quite limited, to make the kinds of stuff I wanted. And for me, like that matters a lot, because for me, it's less about like the industry being a fit for me than it is just the simple fact that I want to make games. There are just things that I want to make, and being able to do those in my free time is really valuable to me, because you know I get to choose the creative decisions. I get to work on the things that I want to work on. If I worked in the AAA games industry or at another game studio or something like that, it might be true that I would like the game that I'm working on, but I would have a lot less freedom and control over that choice.
Yeah, for me, I I knew I kind of wanted to be in more in the technical, like I wanted to do software. But like turns out like I came into UT undeclared and I found myself, I guess, kind of questioning like where I wanted to go. I applied to the computer science program, but I didn't get in. And so one of the other options I was looking into was AET. And I've always been someone who is more technical, but also has a very creative side. And I kind of realized that I didn't want to just like look at bugs all day. And I also didn't want to do just art. So I kind of found like this perfect medium between like programming and art, which is technical art. And I kind of just, you know, rode the wave, and yeah, I guess I ended up here, and I really love it. Like work every day doesn't feel like work at all. So that's kind of where I know that I'm in the right place.
Yeah. I think like for me, it's like right now I'm still like looking to get a games job basically, because it's like I know like after working at a company for like almost half a year, like I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to do this. And it's like, if I go into the game industry, I know I'm going to be earning less money and it's going to be more unstable. I'm going to get less benefits. But personally, for me, I'm just like, I would rather trade all that and work on something that's more personally fulfilling to me. Plus, like, you know, working in the games industry, I'll probably learn like skills and techniques that I can bring to my own like individual game projects versus, you know, my current job, which there's not really anything I can transfer on to like any sort of game I want to make.
So I guess like Ava and Robert, you both talked about individual projects. And I don't know, Justin, if you've worked on any in your free time, but like, how do y'all balance like working in your job and working on your like, individual indie?
So her question was, how do you balance work and your personal projects on the side?
Yeah, that can be really difficult. One thing I want to point out is that sometimes you don't get to make that decision depending on where you decide to work. Some places have clauses that say you're not allowed to compete with them. And sometimes that means you're literally not allowed to make a game while you're working there, even if you spend all of your own time and resources on it outside of your normal work hours. So that was another reason I didn't want to be in the games industry, because I just had stuff I wanted to make. But of course, not every single games company has those sorts of clauses. And even if they do, you can probably negotiate it with them. Like I know some places will let you like declare, oh, here's this project that I've been working on before I even started working here, and I will continue working on that while I'm working here. So that's one thing I just wanted to point out. Like sometimes you won't be able to make that decision depending on where you work. The answer to your question is just that it's difficult. It's really hard to find a balance where you don't like burn yourself out. Just to give you an idea, recently I embarked on a new game development project, and I was trying to figure out how much time I would have to work on the game. And I work an 80% full-time schedule right now, actually. So I only work Mondays through Thursdays, and then I have Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays off, which sounds like a lot of time, but it actually isn't. And when I crunch down all the numbers for like all the things that I wanted to do, I realized that I only had like about like 8 or 16 hours every week, including things like rest and socializing and all these other things to make sure that I don't like, you know, burn myself out, which is something you definitely don't want to do because that will cost you more time overall. And to think about the limited amount of time that you have in a week can sometimes be really annoying, because then you feel like, oh, well, maybe I'll just, you know, I'll work a couple extra hours here, or a couple of hours there, but you have to like be really careful to balance like how much work you do and being burnt out, basically. Because especially if you have a full-time job already, it's hard to find the time to do the game project that you want to do at the same time. So usually what that means is you end up limiting the scope of the kind of thing you're making so that you can actually get your game done in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's like, it's definitely hard to be like, yes, I will work on this game like this much, because I don't know, your work just might exhaust you more than you think or something, and you need to like just rest or something. So I like my personal way of doing it, which is probably not, you know, the best if you're like a more organized person. But if I find that like I'm suddenly like inspired to do something, I'm just gonna like go ham until I'm like, okay, like that's good. So I think for me, it's personally, it's just kind of jumping on the times that I do have the motivation and energy to do it, and then just like kind of game jamming in a way, and just going ham when I can, and then taking the other time to kind of just like recover from working. Um, so it's I guess it's pretty inconsistent, but it, you know, it's life kind of do be like that sometimes. So
Yeah.
What kinds of projects are you all working on right now?
What kinds of projects are you guys working on right now? So I'm it's under NDA, but I'm doing contract work for Universal Studios. And so but the project I was working on before that was at Gearbox, and I was working on the Wonderlands Tiny Tina's. Yeah, just doing technical art stuff.
I'm wrapping up a game jam right now, actually, but the new game project I'm working on is an inventory management game about a dragon girl, like basically scrapping a bunch of old war machinery to melt down into metal bars, and that's the game. And I also stream game development every Monday at 6 p.m. So I'll be working on the game and talking with an audience of people. And that's like part of the reason why my estimate for how much actual development time I have is so low, is because I also want to spend time creating like an audience that I can pitch my game to, basically. And because I want people to play my game, you know? So, but yeah, that's the main game project. And then something I finished recently last year was I added voice acting to a visual novel I made. So that was a lot of fun. Or I guess it's more accurate to call it interactive fiction than visual novel, but yeah.
For me currently, I'm kind of polishing, just like, I don't know, this is kind of just like a personal indulgent project of me, which is to make a thing that helps me on Wordle. So I made something for that I'm just like polishing up to make it more like UI UX friendly or whatever. And then like a more longer term farming sim thing I'm also working on that I'm just kind of like slowly chugging through because it's like a bigger scale project. But yeah, just the Wordle thing for now because it's kind of rent free in my brain.
Yes.
Y'all spoke earlier about how you will balance developing games and working now, but did y'all do the same thing while you were still active developing? How was that scheduled? Or why didn't you if you didn't develop games?
Are you talking about like developing games on top of like schoolwork? Okay, so yeah, he's asking about like when we had that question about like balancing personal projects on top of like our work, but like were we doing that as a student, and I guess how?
I think in a very similar way to like when I was talking about, you know, using my bursts of motivation to do things right now. I kind of used game jams for that during school as well, to just be like, I'm gonna kind of not think about it much, and then like when it's game jam time, that's when I go ham to kind of like save up my energy for it or something. But it, you know, because for me personally, game jam is like a good distraction from doing regular schoolwork. So like my last semester, I kind of just went like really overboard with game jams. I think I did one like almost every 2 or 3 weeks, just to like make games, I guess, because I really wanted to do that over just like, you know, actual schoolwork. But there's also like classes you can take where you make games as well, and those can be like useful for kind of making your personal project also your schoolwork, because usually they have flexibility for like what types of mechanics or whatever you implement.
For me, a lot of my gaming projects were part of the major because I was in the Gamma program at AET. But there are certain things where I did like, I had to kind of push for, like doing my own independent study project. So I was kind of able to combine both like personal projects and schoolwork at the same time. Yeah, so the independent study definitely helped a lot. And then just doing like the capstone classes was a good way to kind of knock out 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I was actually not a terribly good student. I was a lot more willing to take risk, both in terms of burnout and also my grades. So I often spent most of my classes just on my computer working on a game rather than pay attention. So I don't recommend following that example. I almost flunked out of the CS school. I'm sorry. um, uh, but yeah, like in addition to like doing game jams and participating with EGaDS as much as I could, I also tried to do game projects on my own, trying to either do them solo or find people to work with. And I would just do that in addition with the other stuff that I was doing. And when the capstone project came around, it was really great for me. Like you said, two birds with one stone. I was like, well, I'm gonna want to work on a game anyway. Might as well get credit for it. Take the capstone class. I took it 3 times, so yeah, that was pretty great. But being able to do that at the same time was pretty nice. But even while I was doing the capstone, I was still like scheming in the background, doing my own thing too. So I kept pretty busy when I was a student.
Yeah, I kind of wish I took capstone, but I kind of goofed on that. I just had a okay, because I was like, all right, like my last I planned to take it my last semester, but then I got like a full-time internship during that semester, so I was like, I don't think I have the time to do both. But I should have just done it anyways because I did so many game jams that semester. It might as well have been like doing capstone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely finding opportunities at school to like do games as part of your coursework can be really nice. Like even
Yeah.
before the capstone course came around at UT, there was another course on campus called One Semester Startup, which was a startup incubator course thing. We were kind of like a weird group to be there because we were working on a game, and games are typically not very successful, but but we were there and we got credit for it, so you know that was great. And we also learned a lot of stuff about startups. So sometimes you can even like, even though the course isn't specifically like, hey, come make a game, you know, because One Semester Startup was more about like, hey, let's do a startup thing, right? Sometimes you can find opportunities to weave the game development into the course curriculum.
What are some like games or like opportunities that you have like, found out and heard about, you know, online?
What are some cool game dev opportunities that you've heard in Austin or online?
Like, wait, like, what do you mean?
Like there's like ATX game makers event here and like South by Gaming and stuff. Like what are some things along those games like, events that interesting games?
Did you guys hear that?
No, not really.
She mentioned like the South by Gaming, or like the ATX, like game makers. I guess like which stuff was interesting, or if you guys know anything about that.
Well, whenever they bring back Juegos, I think that'd be pretty nice.
Oh, wait.
If they
Yeah, I
bring it
miss
back, I don't
Juegos.
know. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, so I'm more hooked into like the indie side of things. So I don't really know what's happening with like more industry side stuff. But I know at least in Austin, there are a lot of independent game developer events. So there used to be Juegos, that turned into the Museum for Human Achievement, who sort of like took over Juegos, kind of. I'm not really sure what's going on over there. And then there's like ATX Game Makers. There's the Valhalla Esports Lounge that's downtown, where you can showcase your games and have other people come play your games and also, you know, drink lots and lots of alcohol. Um, you know, that's a good combination. But yeah, there's just like, when you plug into the scene here in Austin and you interact with other people in the community, there you hear about all sorts of weird, strange events. Like, you know, there's the Museum of Human Achievement, but there's also like Fantastic Arcade. And it's like hard to specifically state like, oh, here's this one group or here's this one event that's doing things, because it changes so much. Like, you know, Juegos isn't around anymore. But the people who are involved with those sorts of things went to those sorts of things are still around. And so you'll often, like, if you interact with the community, you'll find other people who are doing things in the independent game developer scene, and you can like go to those things and meet people and talk to them and that sort of thing. So it's kind of hard to specifically say like, oh, here's this specific cool thing happening. But if you like participate with the communities, you sort of like can navigate around and see what's going on.
Yeah. I also think like for a global game jam is like a nice opportunity to potentially make games with other like Austin area like indie devs or just like game developers. Like I know some people who like have worked in teams like that and they still like talk to the people that were on their teams. So that could be like a nice way to get connections with other people in the like Austin game dev scene.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like just looking around your community, I remember like one of my coworkers shared the other day that there's like this game dev beer night thing or something like that. Yeah, so I don't know where these events come up from, but there's definitely community around here. I guess if you look into it. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm just saying, in the interest of time, we'll probably do one more if anybody has the last question. If not, the last thing I want to ask is, Ava, are you still working on Rumor?
So Rumor is in kind of a weird spot. Rumor is a narrative scripting language that I made up. It's sort of like if you think about RenPy or Inkle or Twine or that sort of thing. It's just a competitor to all those things. It's most similar to Yarn Spinner, actually. I'm not like actively working on it right now because I'm busy transitioning over from Unity to Godot, which is the engine that I want to start using in the future. But after I figure out how to transition over to Godot and figure out how that ecosystem works, it's highly likely that I will port Rumor over to like Rust or Haskell, so I can use it in Godot for running my dialogue and that sort of thing. To my knowledge, there's only one other developer using Rumor at the moment. And of course, I use it in the game that I added VO to last year. So it's still stable, it works. It's just I haven't done anything actively on it for a bit, and it probably won't be the case for like another year or so as I like figure out the Godot ecosystem so I can port Rumor out into being not Unity specific.
Well, I think since it's a little after 3, we'll probably end it there. But thank y'all so much for coming.
Hey. Yes, can you get me a slice of pizza?
You get a whole box.
Yeah.
Let's just drive it down to Houston real quick.
We have so much pizza now. Well,
Yes.
thank you all again for coming. It was great to hear from y'all. And,
Yeah, thank you.
we'll see you guys around and more EGaDS stuff. So.
Yeah, hopefully soon. I want to like pop out at Game Dev Nights again, but that might happen soon now that we're in stage 2 again. So.
True, true. Gotta visit sometime.
Yeah, please do. As Noah said, yeah, always welcome. We'll go ahead and get set up for our next talk, but you're welcome to hang out. Just if you want pizza or a t-shirt. The 2 of y'all are, of course, welcome to hang out in Zoom chat and listen to our next few speakers. But we'll go ahead and transition out. So thanks again for coming. Great to meet you.